So we've actually had a little bit of good news this week. I don't know if you saw, but Nigel Farage has had his bank account suspended. And that's great for two reasons. Firstly, because it's upset a lot of people who are objectively awful. And secondly, because it highlights that this actually happens to thousands of people across our society all the time. People with refugee status, people who are migrants to the UK, people who are members of the Windrush generation, people with the same names as people in those groups or some of the same details, and lots of other complicated reasons that usually tie back to some form of institutional racism and discrimination. And I actually had a sort of related experience. As you might be aware, I've been away having a little bit of a break before the craziness of the Edinburgh Fringe kicks in. And while I was away, I got in an Uber and the driver went way off the designated route, drove us into kind of the middle of nowhere, asked for twice as much money in cash. I was really very scared. I was all right, made it back to civilization in one piece. But obviously then I reported the driver. But at the same time, he obviously didn't want to lose his licence or whatever. So to save face, he had reported me for engaging in threatening behaviour. And let's be very clear, I had engaged in threatening behaviour because I was afraid for my own safety and I was trying to get away and get out and I was trying to get myself back to civilization, to somewhere where I had phone signal so I would be able to get on with my day and get back to where I was staying. Yeah, I absolutely threatened the guy with being reported, with losing his licence, with pretty much everything in my threatening arsenal, as terrifying as I can be, which is probably not as terrifying as I'd like to be in that situation. As a result, Uber have suspended my account. And because I was in an area where there aren't a lot of other taxi services that work and I wasn't able to download the local one because I've got an international phone, blah, 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 I ended up having to hitchhike to the airport the next day, which is not ideal. It's not the safest thing that one could do. And I'm still without an Uber account, which is likely to affect me at some point when I'm doing gigs in rural places and I need to call an Uber to get home late at night after a show or something. It absolutely could come back to bite me. Hopefully I'll manage to get it reinstated. I'm sending lots of messages and complaining and things. But it highlights, doesn't it, this whole thing that we need to create a society in which the way that these things are managed is through legislation, through the authorities, through government, not through allowing big companies to get a monopoly and a stronghold in the market to the point where they become the law. Because it shouldn't be the big banks that decide who can and can't get a bank account, and it shouldn't be Uber that decides who is and isn't able to get around. We shouldn't be leaving that much power. It shouldn't be Elon Musk who decides who does and doesn't have free speech. It's why we need to nationalise services that are vital to people's lives, and it's why we need to break up monopolies as soon as we see them forming and make sure that there's proper competition in the market and that people are also able to get these services using cash, like at ticket offices for train companies and things like that. I do want, let me be clear though, I do want Nigel Farage to be punished for the lies and the hatred that he has spread, but there's a better way of doing it. We should implement the recommendations of the Leveson inquiry and require the press to be honest, meaning that they won't be able to just print his lies. They'll always have to challenge them and they won't be able to just, put these things out there without making sure that the facts that are included in the articles that these kind of people write have been checked and fact checked and people are getting real information. And I also think that he should be prosecuted for the hatred that he spread. Incitement to hatred is a crime under UK law, and we absolutely can exercise that kind of thing and make sure that people who do it over and over again, like him, feel the consequences of that. But it should be the government that we vote in that sets those laws and enforces them. It should not be big companies. It should not be banks or social media companies or Uber that end up being the law. See you next week. Increasingly, the mainstream media is terrible at informing the public of what is really going on. I'm only able to make these videos because people are generous enough to sponsor me making them, and if you're able to be a part of that, I would hugely appreciate it. It can cost as little as $1 a month and you'll get loads of fun bonus content and lots of extras from me and my undying gratitude. I also massively appreciate it if you're able to like, share these videos and let people out there know what's going on.